Good afternoon, Your Honors, court officials, and my fellow workers in the judiciary. I hope that you are all well and safe amidst this very extraordinary time due to the COVID-19 pandemic that affected almost all nations around the world. To formally start our webinar, we pause for a while for the ecumenical prayer for the courts to be followed by the Philippine National Anthem and the Supreme Court hymn. This is the webinar on the new normal, cybersecurity in a COVID-free, malware-free judiciary. Spearheaded by the Office of the Chief Justice in coordination with the Philippine Judicial Academy, or PhilJA, and the Office of the Court Administrator. I am Elmer Ilaria of PhilJA, your moderator for this afternoon. I'm sure we are all in agreement and truly grateful that the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court is on top of everything and ensuring the welfare and safety of the entire judiciary in this time of pandemic. To share his time with us, please welcome the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the Philippines, the Honorable Diosdado M. Peralta.
A pleasant afternoon to everyone, and welcome to this webinar entitled The New Normal, Cybersecurity in a COVID-free, Malware-free Judiciary. This is the first event of its kind that focuses on answering the cybersecurity culture in the Philippine judiciary. But before anything else, let me first thank Trend Micro, a global leader in cybersecurity, for partnering with us in this webinar to share their expertise and experience. Trend Micro has been doing excellent work, not only in protecting critical infrastructure across the world, but also in helping criminal justice authorities by bringing perpetrators of cybercrime to justice. This webinar is very timely as we recently ruled out the Philippine Judiciary 365, which now enables all court stations nationwide to receive pleadings electronically and select courts in key cities to conduct video conferencing hearings. For this, I would also like to thank Microsoft Philippines for extending to us 2,500 Office 365 licenses, and commend them for supporting the Philippine judiciary in our quest for judicial transformation with the aim of realizing expedited, efficient, and secure trials that are more user-friendly for court users, especially during this time of public health emergency. I have been monitoring our trial courts, and I'm pleased to note that in so short a time from its introduction, video conferencing hearings in select pilot court stations nationwide are in full swing, from Baguio City up north to the Dagupan City in Pangasinan, to the courts in Metro Manila, to Cebu down south in the Visayas, and to Cagayan City farther down south in Mindanao. This has resulted in the release of more persons deprived of liberty. Data from the Office of the Court Administrator show that in 1 week alone, from April 30 to May 8, 2020, some 4,683 PDLs have been released, compared to the initial data gathered over a period of 6 weeks, from March 17, 2020 to April 29, 2020, which tallied 9,731. I am confident that as more courts conduct video conferencing hearings, more PDLs will be released on reduced bail or recognizance. Moving forward, I have instructed the court administrator to recommend other matters pending in our courts, not only urgent ones, can be addressed with the adoption of our new technology. Accordingly, as we incorporate top technologies to improve the administration of justice, especially during these challenging times, we also need to improve our cybersecurity posture and framework built on 3 pillars, namely people, process, and technology. Protecting our ICT resources is not the sole responsibility of our MISO or our Management Information Systems Office, but a shared responsibility by all of us in the judiciary. Everyone has a role to play. Cyber threats change quickly, and we need to adapt to them quickly as well. We will endeavor to continuously empower all our workers in the judiciary from the Chief Justice down to the rank and file personnel with the requisite knowledge in order to bolster our cyber resiliency. And while we continue to heed the advice of our health professionals to observe good personal hygiene to protect ourselves from this virulent virus plaguing us now, I likewise encourage everyone to practice proper cyber hygiene to protect ourselves from being infected with computer viruses, worms, and other malwares. And just like our health professionals, our frontliners during the COVID-19 crisis, we are also all frontliners in the defense against cyber threats. Thank you, and I wish you all a virus-free webinar.
Thank you very much, Chief Justice Peralta. We all hope to see you soon, sir, in person, of course, with the proper social distancing protocol. Now we proceed to our main business this afternoon, as we are all experiencing for almost 2 months already the new normal since the implementation of the enhanced community quarantine. Many government and private offices will operate with skeleton workforce, work from home arrangements, and other acceptable strategies in order to continue the service from various sectors. And the bottom line, office productivity is highly dependent now in the use of the internet. Hence this very relevant topic on cybersecurity. We guarded 2 industry experts in the field of information and communications technology, particularly on cybersecurity. Before I introduce our resource persons, feel free to type up your questions, your honors, as we may have the opportunity for our resource persons to address them later. Our first lecturer, resource person, contributes technical guidance in nation-building exercises related to the development of the strategic cybersecurity frameworks, and she has shared her insights on digital threats and their real-world impact, along with the countermeasure strategies for the competing public in numerous engagements in Europe, Asia-Pacific, and the Middle East. She is an active supporter of and advocate for the protection of children online. She also supports international movements that work on preventing the online commercial distribution of inappropriate images of children. With an MBA earned from the National University in Singapore, she currently leads the Security Research Communications at Trend Labs. This is the Trend Micro's Research and Development Center. She heads the division of the company that monitors the security threat landscape, including high-profile attacks like advanced persistent threats, or APTs, and prevalent threats to mobile cloud and critical infrastructure. With more than 15 years of experience in cybersecurity and strategic communication, all the way from Canada, please welcome Ms. Myla Pilao.
Hi, good morning, or good afternoon, I should say, to everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar series. So I'd like to applaud a lot of the people who are online today. There are a lot of things that you can do today, but you opted to really spend quality time to really learn. And I'd like to applaud the judiciary. I think this is one of the very rare government institution that is embracing technology to its finest. So thank you for putting that together. So for today, I'll be joined by my colleague Lala Manley, who will be speaking later. And we do have 3 important objectives that hopefully we could accomplish with you. Number 1 is, in the world of cybersecurity, we want you to, we wanted to make sure that you are educated. As the most learned individuals and professions in the field of law, I'm sure this is something very mundane for you, but I think the education in cybersecurity has gone too far that is really very challenging for us to sometimes even catch up. The second one is we wanted to ensure that you are empowered. So after this series of education, the most important question that we all have to answer is, what am I supposed to do with all of these threats? And the third one is, it's my aspiration also that hopefully you can help evangelize all that you would learn, or some of the key takeaways that you will get through today. So that's triple E, education, and hopefully you get empowered and help evangelize some of the security practices. So let's begin. We are sadly in the comforts of our home today because of the pandemic. And I think when we take a look at the coronavirus, this is really what I call pushing the world to a lot of unknown. And when we talk about unknown, there's obviously a known source at the moment. There is even a known solution. And sadly, we do have what we call unknown future. We don't know what's the new normal or what likely will be the next abnormal situation that we're in. But if I contextualize what we're having today, coronavirus, versus what is happening in the field of cybersecurity, allow me to make what I call a parallelism. So when we look at these two pandemic attacks that are affecting us today, there are a couple of components. When you take a look at it, they're almost the same. No country, sadly, was spared by COVID-19. And when you look at cyber attack today, there are no countries that have been singled out also, or outliers who have not been affected. When you look at the economy in the context of the pandemic that we see today versus the cyber attacks that we are also experiencing, we know that we are losing not millions, not billions, but probably in a long term, trillions of dollars when it comes to economic debt that it's bringing us. And the last portion is it is affecting real world. It is affecting us, putting us down as well. So these three elements really, when you look at the big picture, the similarities are very much the same. So the question I have in mind is that when I look at the spread of both attacks, let's take a look at it. On your left-hand corner, you can see the spread of infection of COVID-19, which obviously started from the east and immediately jumped into the European region. Below, you will see the digital threats that were spreading at the height of COVID-19. These are digital viruses or threats that have been manipulated alongside the crisis that we are experiencing. The paradigm that you would likely see is that the big similarity is they follow the same trajectory. From the spread, you can see that it's also going into the region where this infection was also going. And second is the fact that you can see that the coverage is immensely bigger than what it was when it started. So the similarities between the pandemic on a health situation versus cyber attacks are sadly almost the same. So today, probably your biggest question is, I want to answer some questions that probably you have in mind when you join the webinar. Myla, why do I have to care? Why do I have to care in the world of this pandemic? I have too many problems already, right? So I will give you three reasons of why we think both the judiciary and us, and of course, Chief Justice has invested this important time to be with you. Let me talk a little bit about the three reasons. Number one is the fact that between today and until we're out of this crisis, 5 out of the 10 cyber attacks that you would likely see, or probably some of us have already experienced and will experience, will be related to the COVID-19. It is how some of these criminals will continue to optimize and maneuver around the crisis. Let me give you some data points. This is the usual attack that you would see from a regardless if it's an enterprise perspective or consumer perspective. In my experience for 15 years in this industry, that spam volume hasn't changed. 9 out of the 10 attacks that we'll see always starts with spam. For some of us, we commonly call it spear phishing, we call it phishing, we call it BEC. But the point I'd like to make is that this would likely be the picture of the attacks that we will continue to see while we are in this situation. So it is important that we need to be aware. When we look a little bit closer to some of the data points, this is where the world is being hit right now. When we look at spam related attacks and COVID-19, you can see that the majority is not necessarily from US. A majority is coming mostly from European countries. They follow the same trajectory of how the infection was working at that time. And if you look at in the context of Philippines, today we account for at least 1% of the infection on spam. And please mind you that 1%, it's not small. We're talking of millions of records. When we look at the other area of how many malicious websites are actually, again, manipulating around COVID-19 attacks, you can see also the dynamics is the same. And of course, Philippines may not be on top, but again, this is millions of URLs that we are looking into, that we're clicking, and we're also visiting and sharing. So that's reason number one of why it is important that we need to care about cybersecurity. The second part I'd like to cover is that there is a great misconception that we are always the victim when it comes to cybersecurity. That is true. However, the most important area is that most of the time we are an intuitive or unintended carrier of that attack as well. When we look at, we've heard a lot of data breaches from retail, from a lot of telco company, from IT, any industry have already been attacked by this particular method. Let's take a look at it when I point out that we are conduit sometimes to the attack. Let me give you a little bit of visual. The item on top is the cause of data breach. The item below is what they are stealing when they are maneuvering around this attack. Take a look at it very closely. What we're trying to look at in here is that what is the implication of what a lot of the organizations say the weakest link, which means you and me, the employees or the user. When you look at unintended disclosure, this attack actually is driven by mostly by personal information, health, or education. This, and then when you look at insider leak and even loss and theft, the common denominator amongst these three is that these are all factors driving the users. These are user-driven methods of attack. No technology, no other conduit, but just the employees or the users alone, right? So that is what I'm pointing out, that sometimes it is not our intent to distribute some of the attack, but just because of practices that we are not abreast to, then we are becoming a carrier, and we are becoming really what I call a major transporter of some of the attacks. The last point I'd like to make of why we should care, just like you and me, we work in an organized fashion. I would say this is the best time for a lot of the cyber criminals. They are what I call in a mad rush, because this is their time. And in the industry that we live in cybersecurity, this is something traditional. We know that every global or big event, they will continue to thrive, and they will find ways to penetrate around that topical issue. And true enough, today, we can see that the cyber criminals are actually laundering a lot of tools, techniques, and tips in the underground world on how they can continue their campaign. Campaign means their attack. So those are three big reasons of why I think we need to care. Let's go to a more interesting topic. There are so many attacks. When I started in this industry about 15 years ago, on an average day, we only get about 100 attacks. Today, fast forward more than a decade, we are getting about 20, right? And that's 20 billions of attack. And that's how big the surface is, right? So my point is that let's cover a little bit of what's in it for me. Where are the attacks that we Filipinos are sometimes more vulnerable to? Because of time constraint, we will focus on the three areas that we think has the most impact in terms of cybersecurity. And please take a look at this in the context of not just you as a corporate user, as a government employee, but also as a regular users, because at the end of the day, we're moms, we're dads, we're parents, etc. So this kind of attack transcends between whatever you are and in whatever platform you are at. So let's start with this one. I'd like to put the context. The biggest myth that we do have is that once you're attacked, a lot of people feel that's it. No, once you are attacked, whether it's just a mere password that they have stolen, or a little bit of a credential that they got from your banking account or social media account, please note that it doesn't stop. It actually spreads. It just like the virus that we see today, it spreads. That is the mechanism of why we are in this situation. Let me explain a little bit of why is it spreading. Please look into the many areas that we now have in terms of transmitting information. We have a lot of platforms and tools around us that allows us to do what we call our daily computing habits, right? So in the slide that you see today, I just like to contextualize that these are all the available resources that we do today to be able to transfer, to share, and to even store data, right? Whether that's your personal data, like the pictures that you send, or whether these are the corporate data that you send back and forth to some of the courts. So let's take a look at it. When consider the yellow buttons are actually the data that you transmit. If you're using endpoint or what we call just the basic laptop, computer, desk, or mobile or tablet, they are all endpoints. So imagine that this can be the entry point of a lot of the attacks. In the analogy of a house, this is where some of the bad guys will be able to come in, right? As in the process that you are doing your regular computing habits, whether you are putting up the data, transferring it, or storing it, you are actually what we call merging the data, right? So if the data is coming from my laptop and I want to share it to someone who's probably in Pagadian using a cloud platform, like sharing it in a public email address, it's going through the cloud. Or I wanted to put it and store it in a USB drive, this is how it works. So the point is, you don't have control right now of where the data is going. What you are in control of is where the data resides. So that is the reason that a lot of the attacks are spreading, is because they are all going in and out of all of the systems that you have today, right? So when we take a look at it, what are the top 3 attacks that we think it matters that we have to have a conversation? Let's name number 1. And as I said earlier, 9 out of the 10 attacks are really attributed to spam, okay? Sadly, amongst the 100+ countries worldwide, Philippines is actually ranked 40th in terms of the global infection. What does this mean? Meaning to say we are a little bit on the upper percentile when it comes to infection and dissemination of spam. Meaning we get infected and we actually sadly are able to share it as well. So this is an important conversation that we have to make. Let me use this image, and I'm pretty sure as part of the judiciary, you can relate to this. The picture on your left, obviously, is what we call the creator of the first global virus in 2000 called I Love You virus. The item on your right is actually what we call the biggest cybercrime that has been accounted for, attributed to the bank, and this is the Bangladesh account. Why am I putting these two together? Most of the time, when we receive a spam, we completely underestimate its power. I am purposefully sharing with you this slide because you can see that the dent and the impact of that small spam that we sometimes underestimate can be really big. Just a little bit of trivia for you. 2 months ago, I was contacted by BBC because they wanted to trace Onel de Guzman, who was the Filipino creator of I Love You virus. And at that time, in 2000, almost 100,000 plus computers were taken down by this virus, even the US federal system. And they were able to trace him at the moment in one of, I think he works for, he has a small business, right? So look at it this way. In 2000, 150,000 computers were futile because of the I Love You virus. When I look at the challenge that we had with the Bangladesh problem with RCBC, the correlation here is it started with a spear phishing email or spam from the New York Federal Reserve, which again followed the direction of how some of the credentials were stolen. And as a result, they were able to authorize some of the transfer. You are probably more adept than I am with this, but on a technical level, what I'm pointing out is the main culprit is not any complex attack. It was merely what we call a traditional spam playing with our psychology, right? So in the next couple of minutes, I will turn over to Lala Manley, who is our senior threat researcher focusing on spam, and she will really cover how can we spot spam and how can we be empowered so that we don't transfer them, but we're able to protect ourselves. So I'll transfer it to you, Lala.
Before Lala,
Sure, Tony, go ahead.
Our next research person, Your Honors, is the senior researcher from the Trend Micro Research. She has been with the company for 13 years now, and she graduated Bachelor of Science in Mathematics in Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila. And she specializes on email threat analysis and machine learning. Please welcome Ms. Lala Manley.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, Ms. Myla. So good afternoon again, everyone. So for today's, my topic for today's webinar is phishing campaigns amid COVID-19 pandemic and how to avoid them. So in this presentation, I'll be covering the following. First, a few background information on what is phishing. Then I'll be discussing how you may be able to identify phishing and how to avoid it. And third, I'll be showing you samples of the recent phishing campaigns that Trend Micro has encountered. And lastly, I'll talk about what you can do if your account has been phished or compromised. So let's start. So what is phishing? Perhaps many of you have already heard this term. It is actually derived from the word phishing because the main idea is to phish for information. So it's a form of identity theft in which scammer uses an authentic looking message from a legitimate business, that is to trick recipients into giving out sensitive personal information. And normally these messages will urge recipients to click on a link to update their profile or carry out some transaction, but then the link will then take the victim to a fake website. And when you enter your personal or financial information, like your username, password, or credit card details, it will be sent to the scammer. So you may wonder, how is phishing different from spam? I'm sure all of you are more familiar with the latter. So let's discuss some differences. Spam is an unrequested and unwanted messages with irrelevant or mostly commercial content, whereas phishing is a fraudulent attempt to steal sensitive information of a user for malicious reasons and by disguising as a trustworthy entity. And spam is commonly used for advertising, quick money schemes, and spreading malware, whereas phishing is used to get confidential details of the user through social engineering techniques like intimidation, trust, urgency, and so on. And basically, spam is just a junk email flooding your inbox. But phishing is not just limited to emails, but which are through calls or text messages, we call smishing, or social media messages. But spam is maybe the most usually vector for phishing attacks. So this is an example of a typical spam message, a dating email, compared to a phishing email pretending to be from Apple support. So while phishing is more dangerous if you compare the two in terms of risk, spam is more of just like a nuisance, while phishing is more dangerous because if, for example, you click that link, it might download a malware or you are sending your credentials to the phishers. So now if a phishing attack is targeting a specific individual or a company, we call that spear phishing. But there's this special type of phishing targeting seniors or upper management roles like directors or CEOs and the like, and that is what we call business email compromise or BEC. So BEC is a special type of phishing attack designed to impersonate senior executives and trick employees, customers, or vendors into wiring payment for goods or services to alternate bank accounts. And this one is an example of a BEC email. So this email pretends to come from Mr. Ernesto Tanmantiong, the CEO of Jollibee. But notice that the email address used as the sender of the email is not related to the company. And in fact, it's just a free email service from earthlink.net. And notice as well the subject line used, urgent request. Um, Mostly, BECs are crafted to make it appear like conversational or personalized. That's the characteristic of a BC email, to make it or sound it appear like legitimate. So now, let's talk about how you can spot a phishing attack and what you can do to prevent it. So like when you're reviewing your emails or checking websites, um, you will be familiar with some indicators that will equip you with the right knowledge to avoid getting victimized. So first and the most common is generic greetings. Legitimate companies will usually address you by your name. So if you see email greetings like dear account holder or dear customer, dear valued client, you have to flag it as suspicious. And then there's fake links in email addresses. So many of us don't actually ever look at the email address when we receive one, right? But it's equally important to look at the email address and not just the sender. So like for this one, the email comes from Banco de Oro and PayPal, but the email addresses used are not related to those two companies. So what you can do if you see a link is to hover over the link or long press the text to check the URL where it leads, but be very careful not to click it, just like as this one, because it will redirect to the phishing site. Next is request for personal or financial information like your credit card or bank account number or even your login credentials. Keep an eye out for emails requesting you to confirm personal information that usually you don't provide. And just let's say by any chance you think there's a possibility that the email is genuine, you just have to search online or contact the organization directly. And following that are emails asking for payment or donation. Now, this is very common now for COVID-19 related phishing. You might be receiving emails requesting for a payment via bank transfer like GCash or PayMaya, or even virtual currency like Bitcoins. Those are most likely phishing. So if you receive such emails, take extra time to evaluate the message if it's legitimate or not. And there are also messages or emails that prompts to download documents or files. These files may contain malware and that will capture keystrokes or your mouse movements. So never download documents from any location unless you are certain that the source of that email is legitimate. And you have to take time to review the authenticity of the message. Now, also majority of phishing emails are poorly written. So many of these scammers aren't really very good at writing. So you have to look at the context of the error and determine whether it's a clue to something. Or you can ask yourself questions like, is this a common typo? Or can this email be from a template? And as always, if you're in doubt, look for examples on the web. So do your research. Next, there's this sense of urgency. Phishing emails often try to demand immediate action because the goal is for you to click on the link that is included in their message and for you to provide personal information. But what you can do instead is just to delete the message. Last but not the least is to review and confirm information only from trusted sources and websites. So you can directly visit sources like who.int, nih.gov, or cdc.gov if you want to get the latest factual information about COVID-19. And of course, never share unverified information about any situation so as not to spread fake news. Okay, so let's recap. So I'll be showing you a phishing email and I'd like everyone to please check and examine the email sample and see how many phishing indicators you can spot. So this is the email and you can either use the chat or the Q&A feature of Microsoft Meeting if you want to answer. So maybe some of you can see or can spot 2 or 3 or more phishing indicators. So I'll give you a few more seconds to read the email and check it carefully. Okay, so let's review. So this sample shows a fake sender. It's pretending to come from finance, but the email address comes from a free email service, gmail.com. And it's using a generic greeting, dear staff, instead of addressing the recipient, Jane. It has a link to download a file, which probably is malicious. A sense of urgency, prompting Jane to act fast within 48 hours. And lastly, of course, some spelling and grammatical errors. So thank you for checking that email. And I hope by now it will be easier for everyone to identify a phishing attack. And we'll now know if you receive one. Okay, so with that, let me now walk you through some of the recent phishing attacks that is COVID-19 crisis related. So these are some of the COVID-19 themed email message and websites that Trend Micro researchers have acquired. The first image is a phishing email pretending to come from CDC. So many of these phishing emails pretend to be from official organizations, and they will contain updates and recommendations connected to the disease. And as most of the phishing attacks, the message will include links that will redirect you to a spoof website that will attempt to steal your personal sensitive information. And this phishing email example used the subject line coronavirus latest updates and claimed to come from Ministry of Health. So for this one contained recommendations on how to prevent infection, and it came with an attachment that supposedly contains the latest updates on COVID-19, but actually this attachment carries malware. So from my previous slides, again, be wary of clicking or downloaded attachments from emails like this. And we also encountered this phishing message taking advantage of goodwill, requesting donation as emergency funds for COVID-19 relief efforts. But of course, it's not related to COVID-19. I mean, it's not. It's just a fake emergency fund campaign. And the right image claims that the recipient must contact the sender to claim $1 million donation from a certain foundation. Again, fake, but who wouldn't want $1 million, right? So, but if something is too good to be true, then it probably is not. So beware. And for this one, fishers are always pretending to be legitimate organizations. That is in an effort to collect valuable personal information. And so they created this fake COVID-19 safety portal, pretending to come from World Health Organization. But actually, upon logging in, they'll be getting your phone number. And the right image is another example of a malicious site that phish personal data, your email address and password. And this is a fake US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention site. Now, as many companies adopt work from home policies because we are in lockdown, cyber criminals are also seeking to exploit coronavirus to target companies and employees. And communication technologies like Zoom or Microsoft Meetings, maybe some of you are using that, are being used by crooks as a vector for attacks. So for this one, this is a Zoom phishing page that gives attackers access to your login credentials and not actually the original Zoom website. And another work from home tool used by many is WebEx Meeting. WebEx, like Zoom, is an online video conferencing tool that allows virtual meeting with other people. So this one is a fake Cisco WebEx page. Notice how the website URL is creatively crafted to resemble to that of original. So they just added an extra character to differentiate. And so you will not notice that it's a fake website. And bank institutions have also observed an increase of bank-related cybercrime cases amid COVID-19. So be careful when you're doing your online banking. Here is a sample we have encountered targeting BDO online users. This phishing campaign invoked fear and urgency by noting that the recipient's account will be deactivated unless they act quickly. So using that as a subject line as a technique is said to be effective and gets most clicks. And again, it uses generic greetings and a link that will redirect to a phishing website. So here is actually the website that you will see when you click the link on the email. This is an exact template of the original video website. So if you're not really careful and if you don't notice the website you're into, then you will be phished. And here are some other online banking phishing emails Trend Micro researchers have encountered. The first one is from Union Bank PH. The blue link is the original site and the red link is the fake or the phishing website. This is for Metro Bank. And last is this is for BPI. So malicious actors are also aware that many users across the globe are quarantined and spending more time looking for entertainment online. So if you're a Netflix fan, here's a phishing site that we spotted that steals Netflix account credentials. And they even use CAPTCHA method to as phishing technique to trick the user that this one is legitimate. And here's the last example I have. So during this coronavirus lockdown, it is but natural for youngsters to turn into mobile games to alleviate boredom. And because of that, scammers are targeting online game players and are also creating these phishing online gaming sites. If you're into phishing, you may be probably familiar with Steam. So except for the images at the bottom, the phishing website on the right is almost exact duplicate of the original message or the original website on the left. So, with our current situation right now, cybercriminals are taking full advantage of the increase in COVID-19 communications, and they're launching phishing attacks that mentions COVID. So, for background information, I'm showing you a graph here of how phishing attacks have increased during this time. The graph on the left shows the daily count of phishing attacks seen by Trend Micro that is related to specific to coronavirus alone. So only phishing sites that mentions COVID. And while the graph on the right shows the same data on a monthly view. So imagine from 100 phishing sites to almost 8,000 in a span of 4 months. And last on my topic is that what will you do or what can you do if you fall for an email scam or phishing? So you've got phished, what now? So if you suspect that your account or personal information have been compromised, you can do the following. First is to change your password. Normally, if on your email account, you would see links to forgot or change password. So just follow the prompt and instructions on how you can get a new one. And then you can set up a two-factor authentication or sometimes called two-step verification if possible, because some email clients doesn't have this feature. But I think if you're using Yahoo or Gmail, it does have it. It better protects users' credentials and resources that the user can access if you set that up. And third is to contact the organization involved. If it's your bank, advise them immediately that someone was able to get an access to your account. And then scanning for computer viruses would also be a good thing. Educating yourself is one thing, but having the right tools in place is just as important. Then, of course, disconnect from the internet. If you click any malicious link or downloaded the file, disconnecting from the internet may prevent further damage and could also prevent hackers to further conduct their malicious activities on your machine. And let's say if you're already unable to access your account, then maybe setting up a new one could be an immediate resolution. And of course, alert your contacts because these scammers may also get access to them and send them malicious links as well. And of course, to avoid future phishing schemes, practice safety measures discussed in this presentation. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope you learned a thing or two. And to conclude, may I remind you all once again to always be mindful of the websites you regularly use and to always keep your online credentials accounts as private as possible. So I'll turn you over to Miss Myla.
Thanks, Lala. I was busy answering questions on the chat, but that's fine. You have very difficult questions, but I think they are important. So some of the questions that I got will be covered in the next session. So I'm glad that we're enabling the chat to do that. So majority of the questions that I encountered are either, are you guys safe if you're already using Office 365? And will that have the capability to protect you? So I will kind of discuss that. And the second one I hear a lot from the chat is, what about our mobile devices? Are they equally vulnerable? Can they also be the conduit to attack? So here's the answer, okay? So for personal devices, Philippines has the highest appetite when it comes to the adoption of anything new. Way before a lot of the smartphones were here, we were the first early adopters. When the smartphones were arrived in the economy, there is about 2 to 3 times in volume when it comes to the order, right? So short thing is the fact that we love devices that makes us feel connected. And I think especially on this situation, our best friends are really these mobile devices. I may not be able to see you right now, but I can somehow picture that this is how we all look like, right? So we are in an ECQ or whatever quarantine level we do have today, but this is our new normal. We're stuck at home, and our only thing that we could do right now is be connected. And because of social distancing, we don't have a lot of option. That is why the degree and intensity of our usage and our consumption on the internet has really doubled in a lot of folds, right? So this is intuitive. But what I'd like to focus on today is when I say personal devices, please look into not just your smartphone, your mobile phones. Personal devices can be a lot of components. So these are your tablets, right? These are your smart gadgets that either wearable devices like your smartwatches, or these are smart gadgets that are actually that we are starting to invest at, right? To make our home smarter and secure. But here's the thing. When we look at all these personal devices, don't get shocked. This is the reality. And I challenge you, after this session, pick up your phone or pick up your mobile, your personal device, and look at the application that sits there. Today, I can guarantee that 8 out of 10 of the application that sits on your device are either high risk or malicious. And I want to make this a clear distinction of that. When we say high risk, they are not necessarily bad. They just have features that might compromise you or you become more vulnerable, okay? When we say malicious, this is designed and contemplated with the intent to do something bad to you, either to steal your information, to compromise your unit, or anything to that effect, okay? So please keep that in mind. So let's dive into this because a lot of your questions were in this area. Why do I say, Mylan, why do you say 8 out of the 10 applications are actually malicious? Let's look at the platform. We are extremely good friends with Google and Apple, but today, when you can create an application as quick as about 2 to 3 days. That's how agile we are, right? So that is one of the things that causes a lot of the application in the marketplace to be, there's a flood rather of applications. The second one is when some of the applications were built, they were built based on the purpose. So let's say, for example, if the application that I'm using right now is, let's say, for games, right? There's a lot of Coin Master or similar stuff. They were designed to entertain. They were designed to be competitive online. They were not designed to be secured, right? So that is the second portion. The reason we have now is because the developer mindset in the past, today it is improving, but in the past it was designed for one purpose only, but security is not number one, right? So what you're seeing today is the 80% that I'm saying. So when 20% only are valid and legitimate, this is the breakdown of the 80%. What are they doing? So there was a attorney who asked me whether they steal information. So this answers your question. A majority of the applications are either fake. So when you download, for instance, an Angry Bird, we don't necessarily, there's probably 3 or 4 or 5 versions and you cannot keep up, right? So majority of them are using fake applications. They mimic and copy. The second one is a little bit more difficult because they don't just create applications that are not legitimate. They are designed to steal information. These names might sound technical to you, but these are some of the famous data stealing attacks that the applications. And the other is just there to irritate you, meaning to push ads. And remember, ads are valid, right? So there's your Lazada, there are some of the Grab food, etc. So they are designed to push ads, but it irritates us, right? The other one is what we call premium abuser. This is very different. When you look at your bill today, sometimes you don't pay attention to maybe 20 cents, $1 or $2. But premium abusers are actually the culprit for those charges that we sometimes see online because they were designed to hijack your account and use it to their purpose, okay? And the two ones that are in 13 and 4% are just what I call a conduit for a bigger attack. They just design it there. This tool sits there, it observes, right? But it is not doing something. They're very covert for now, okay? And I will go back to that, why they will stay covert, okay? So if you follow me, this is the 80%. Let's go to the COVID-19. Remember earlier I said, Lala mentioned this, at the height of COVID-19, a lot of people's question is, what is this pandemic? So naturally, a lot of the mobile applications that are high risk and sometimes malicious that we saw is utilizing the same thing. These are applications where you get news. These are applications to keep you up to date, right? So this is, again, a sample of that attack. If this is sitting in your phone right now, make sure to delete it. Then, in the last few weeks, what we've seen is the spy, okay? Which means that, remember, I will go back. Remember this 4% and 13%? They are designed to sit there because their purpose is to use the information that they can collect to spy. Okay, the first attack that we saw is actually a cyber espionage from one country to the another. And they were looking into solutions, which means what research the others have versus what they can put together. So the point I'd like to make is that I purposely chose 2 examples that are very simple. It will not impact you if this sits on your account. They are actually sometimes high risk, but the other one is spy or espionage. They're extremely high risk, right? And malicious. So the point is, this is how mobile applications are being used today from something very simple to something very complex. So the point is, why is this happening? Here we go. And I want you to imagine when you download your application, okay? You have to admit to yourself that we are 3 clicks away. When I go to Google Play or whatever marketplace there is, I choose the application. I go to the actual applications and put an install one and then finish or complete that, right? So we have the habit of 3 clicks away. And that is the reason that we're also 3 clicks away to being compromised. What do I mean by this? When we see a particular application, this is our behavior. we don't spend a little bit of time, or maybe some of us do, so pardon me, but most of the time, a majority of us, and that includes me, okay, we barely do not look into the feature of the application. So I want you to pay attention to this one. Most of the feature of the applications are here. Let's look down to privacy. When we look at the privacy, this is like a domino effect. You don't see the other permissions that they're asking because we just click install and complete. But when you look at privacy, this is an example of privacy. They're asking you to either turn on your camera, give them access to your contacts, which means your name list, even some of the features that you have, like your microphone, right? Or even the storage devices. So my point is, by default, if the application is high risk and intended to really steal information, all of this are enabled. I repeat, they are by default enabled until you and I press otherwise. But it doesn't stop there. When you give them permission, there are applications, okay, that go further. Remember the 14 and the 30%? They have access to your identity. So if you're storing, we're famous for storing and saving our password for every mobile banking, sometimes our social media accounts, that's identity. They can have access to everything and almost everything, even the photo and media files that you have. And even hijack, or if they want to, hijack or compromise your Wi-Fi connection. Okay? So Myla just stops there. Actually not. If you go further, there are even applications that they just don't look at it, they don't just store it, but actually they have the capability to transfer some of those files to somewhere else, and that's what we call command and control. Okay, can you when you look at this one, okay, this is what I was telling you earlier about premium abuser. So this is almost sending your telco and saying, oh yes, I am this is legitimate and I'll be answerable to any cost that this will do. Okay. So here is just an example of what I meant, that let us not underestimate some of the applications that sits on our phone. Imagine if this is a corporate phone, or this is a company provided phone where most of your transactions are recorded. You are not just putting yourself, but also the company and the brand at stake. Okay. So this is hopefully answer some of the questions that we have on the Q&A of why some of the applications are challenging at the moment. Okay, so the question is, what do we do? Okay, we don't want to leave you in that particular. There is solution. Okay, a lot of the challenges that we have today is just because, number one, you don't have the mobile security on your phone. You have to have that. Right? No matter how irritating that is, it is non-negotiable. And in front of you, I will not go through it in detail, but it is already here. Here are just some of the features and tips that you can do. I'm not a parent, but I have 4 wonderful nieces and nephews. I normally enable this portion because they use my phone a lot. So these are features that are already embedded on your phone. And if you download a mobile security, it is already embedded. So allow the technology to help you. Do not control the technology, but allow them to be partner of your security. A lot of the things that I have here are part of the security measures that are already sitting on your phone, okay? So fundamentally, I think the most important part is review what you put in on your phone, what you download, right? If you feel otherwise, you can either disable them, okay? If you have a mobile security device working on your platform, a lot of the tools that I mentioned to you, remember the malicious ones, the ones who has bad intent, they should have been detected and blocked. So the system will not allow you to even download, okay? Clear? So the last part is on data security. As vanguards for our our own security also, and you guys craft a lot of what we, in terms of law and legalities. I think we have to really discuss data security, but I will try to contextualize what data security is. This is not my data. We've partnered with ITU. We've been sitting in some of their cybercrime sessions, and as a lot of you know, ITU stands for International Telecommunications Union, which is the cybersecurity arm and telco arm of United Nations. So I want again to applaud Philippines, because when I was doing this session, I've been doing this for a long time, our numbers were sad, very sad. This is the 2018 because they have not received done their 2019. So I think this shows that amongst the 100+ countries worldwide, we are doing well when it comes to data security. This cyber index measures 4 elements: our laws. Are we bounded by a lot of legal parameters to protect users? The economy, the financial part, and also technology. If you're interested, I'll give you the link, but I'm sure you're more abreast than I am on this one. So let's take a look at data security. If we're ranked 58 right now, which is good, what are the things that probably we need to be worried about? This is very surprising to me. In reality, when you look at the data that sits in our World Wide Web, we're sitting in a big cloud, okay, because of the internet. It was just been put together or created actually in the last 2 years. Can you imagine the mega terabytes of data that we have today was only created in the span of 2 years, and that's 90%. And the reason for that shouldn't be very difficult for us, right? Because there's social media, there's tools, there's technologies, there's gadgets, and of course the price is not too much. So the barriers to entry are very, very low. And that's the reason that we're in this world, right? We have a lot of data. But let's contextualize data into 3 things. Please remember that data means, and I'm referring to every time that you click, every time that you tap, and every time that you swipe is synonymous to data. You are producing data, okay? There are 3 perspectives I'd like to share today. Number 1 is data that we share. So in the context of the office environment, you and I share a tremendous amount of data. Data for an individual, for a function, or even classified and otherwise, right? So that's what we meant by data that we share. As consumer of this World Wide Web, in this digital age, we are also consumer of data. Just before this, I have to Google a lot of this statistics. So I consume data. And the most important thing is that we also transfer or transit data. Okay, so all of us are, I would say, responsible individuals who are performing all of this data responsibility. Again, as a worker from a government perspective, or even as a regular consumer. So here are some of the challenges that we face today. Okay, we categorize them as the top 10. You will get these slides, but I want to focus only on the one that I have encircled, because they are where we are most vulnerable at. Because today we are working from home, and I don't know when it will be. Probably the next 2 to 3 months will be the same one. So I just want you to be cognizant that when you start sharing data, the list that you have in front of you are some of the biggest challenges, of I call mistakes, that we do have. Let's take a look at number 1. The first thing that you do when you go to a cafe, you wanted to check where's the Wi-Fi, isn't it? Right? So this is common. But however, we are just spreading or expanding our attack surface, right? We have to be cognizant of the network that we plug into. If you will transact very important, extremely classified info, please don't do it on public network, right? The second one that we sometimes look into is that we feel that when we delete the files over and transfer them to the bin and empty the bin, we feel that we have been deleted. They have not been deleted. And if you're looking at an archive, it actually sits in your archive. Okay, so we need to be mindful of that. A majority of the data breaches is because of the failure of a lot of us to be able to properly dispose a lot of those information. The next one is, we're very perennial for this one. We use a lot of devices and stuff, right? So this is again another conduit of attack, is using a lot of these portable devices. It's convenient for sure, but however, whatever you store here, this is the manner we transfer it. We share the information, right? So we ended up sharing a lot of the viruses as well. Okay, and then of course, I know number 10 is very difficult. I have to agree with you. This is the segmentation of what we call, if your phone or your devices or your computer is designed for office, just ensure that you do the same one. You try to segment the information. So those are what we call the challenges of when we share data. And this in front of you are the reasons of why we're facing a lot of data insecurity problem. The second one is when we consume data, okay? Let me show you some pictures. I know there is no polling capability of Microsoft Teams, but in your chat engine or just, where you're sitting right now, we got 4 images right now. What I want to ask you is that how many of the images, or which image do you think is a valid image? So this one is from National Geographic. This is from New York. This is 911 before. This is the plane, as you can see, before 911 hit that big building. And of course, this is New York as well. I don't know why I chose a lot of New York. So I can see some of the chat. There's 2, there's 3. Actually, the question is, I don't know. In today's world, it is so difficult for regular people like you and me, and even people who are in the technology industry, to even discern what is a fake information, what is a fake image, or a manipulated image. So this is the second problem that we have today when I meant consumption. The biggest challenge is we ended up sharing it. Right? If we are unsure or we don't even validate it, we ended up sharing it. So that compounds the problem of a lot of fake or uncredible information that sits online. Okay, so that is one of the big challenges we have today. And one of the things that people were saying is that is truth dead, at least online, right? So the next big problem that I think we will face is in transit, data in transit. I am showing you an actual examples of a photo, okay, that I took, and this is actually public. This is a camera to some of their spaces at their living areas and bedrooms. So what am I pointing at? We have a system called Shodan. Shodan is the depository of all internet gadgets, okay, whether it's camera, smart, remember that smart gadget I was telling you about? It is a repository of that. And if you do not change your password, when you buy, let's say, a gadget, an IP camera, right, or the Siri of the world or the Google of the world, they have a default setting. They have a default password. 7 out of 10 of our consumer today rely on those default settings. Because we're too excited, we ended up using it, plugging it, and hoping that it will allow us monitor and put up a surveillance in our area so that people can be secured. But it is the opposite. You might be secured at home, but you're not necessarily secured online. So this data, okay, this actual picture was taken because they did not protect themselves. The specifications of their camera. It's just there, so you can see what's happening, right? You can monitor, you can eavesdrop, right? Here's another example. This is just an ordinary $100 sound system. Sometimes we refer to what we call the smart home gadgets, right? That you can talk to the Alexa, the Google and stuff. Remember, they are designed to follow your phrase. They are designed to listen to phrase. Hi, Alexa, hi, Google, or whatever, right? Stop. They're all designed by phrases. But there are applications that if we do not update can actually record the conversations without you knowing it, okay? Because they're not trained to spot that, right? But we are trained to upload applications in that system that are legitimate. So what I'm pointing out right now is we are transiting information that unknowingly is personal sometimes to us. Or imagine if this is in a big workplace area, then some of your office classified information could have been leaked, right? So you can Google later, show them, but it will show you that some of the IP cameras, it's a database for a lot of the IT gadgets that we have today. So going back, those are the big three problems in the data. We have the capability to contribute to the data, but sometimes we share and transit the data. And that's what we call data contamination. When you try to mix everything. This is a picture, the best analogy what I meant by data contamination. This is the wildfire in Australia a couple of months ago. Can you detect where the bushfire or the wildfire began? The answer is very pronounced, no, right? So this is also, you put it in the context of data. When you transfer, store data and you inadvertently have they are containing malicious information, it is very difficult to detect already because it has spread. It has blended, it has mixed into the knowns and the unknowns, right? So that is what we call data contamination. So the point is, what are we supposed to do, right? Again, practice data segmentation. I said earlier, if you are going to transact a very important file, make sure that you are using the most secured gadget or tools that you have in a secured location. That is very important. The second one is reinforce what we call privilege and restriction. If this is classified, if you try to email it to someone, don't email it to the whole world, okay? And then there are tools in your Microsoft Office 365 that tells them if this is in what degree of security you want them to employ, right? You can even track who's reading it or did not read it, right? Someone asked me earlier if they can retrieve data that has been deleted accidentally. The sad part is if it did not back up, there are really very limited ways that you can do it. So let's all make it a practice to back up our data so we don't get into that problem that we have to retrieve them. Okay, remember ransomware was actually a psychological attack against backupping your data. So make sure to do that. The second one is that reduce your attack surface. I've mentioned this already. A lot of the tools that you have on hand today, they have built-in security. You don't have to pay a penny. They already have it. Please enable them. As I said, they are your partners. Access only through trusted Wi-Fi. If you're really challenged that you have to conduct that business, go to a secured location rather than use a lot of the free ones, whether in the mall or cafes, etc. And of course, to access credible source of information. Again, I'm sure you guys are a master of this one more than I am. And the last one is secure your gateway. Remember the picture I showed earlier? Why viruses are spreading is because we have a lot of gateway. Imagine your house, right? You have a lot of locks and doors, you have your windows, you have your back alley, etc. There's so many gateway. You have a complex password. But however, it is not enough. You need to have a two-tier authentication. The good news is some of the tools that you'll be using as soon you migrate to Office 365 are designed to do that. They might cause some irritation, but remember, a lot of the benefits will definitely outweigh some of the inconvenience that we do have or we will have once we have better tools to protect us. Okay, so to wrap up, I wanted to help everybody, understand that security is not the responsibility of your MIS team, not your IT guy, not your vendor. It is a shared responsibility because the three elements, the consumer, that's us, our provider, and their security partner are all in what we call the context of a shared responsibility. And I want to leave you with three things. I understand that security is not easy, but it's not cheap. But take a look at this. If you want to protect the most classified, most important jewels that you have, it is commensurate to the kind of investment that you want. If you want free, that's fine. But that's also the same amount of protection that you will get, right? The second one, again, as vanguards for security and justice, let's join together. Don't let our these bad guys win. Most of the time, they are 2 steps ahead. But the challenge for us is that how can we empower ourselves so that we would know how they will maneuver, right? And the third thing is that a lot of the things that me and Lala have talked about are sometimes within external factors. But a lot of it is actually, when you think about it, is within your control, right? They are not something that we could outsource or we can blame others. A lot of the things, security practices, are actually within our control. So let me leave you with 3 things. It's not Christmas, but let me leave you with, hopefully this will help you navigate this very challenging digital world. I will provide the link here and I will send it to Attorney Boy later. We would like to, it's like the house, right? Let's clean up the house. So there is a free tool from our company. You can use this or you can use competitive tools, that's fine. But this is what we call house call. So what it does, it scans all, if you're unsure of where you're vulnerable, just like spring cleaning your house, you wanted to find out where am I vulnerable, you can download this and it will scan, it will show you what entryway, what are the things that you're vulnerable for, right? So we will give you that particular link. This is free, don't worry. The second one is that we understand that we are all in a remote locations and sometimes it is really very difficult and security is challenging. So we will give you the link to this free 1 year for our Trend Micro internet security product so that you can get protected. Okay, I think that's the first one. When you do this, there is also a Trend Micro for mobile protection. You don't have to pay for it, and it's actually it doesn't have a timeline, right? So you can download both so that you have the confidence of doing everything, not just on your laptop or your desktop, but also on your mobile. Okay, so we want to give you this one as a thank you. And the last one is help us help you. If you have some set websites that you are not sure whether you want to move forward or you want to visit, we have what we call the community sharing. Plug it here, put the URL, for instance, it's yahoo.com.gr, for instance, and we will help you check it. And we will help you understand whether that's safe so that you can visit it. And if it's not safe, we will tell you why. Whether it's dangerous, it's suspicious, or we haven't tested it. And when it rates this one, you are actually helping us. You're helping the community because it's like paying it forward because our ability, we cannot know everything. So if you are lodging in a site that is not yet safe, then we will go through every method to authenticate that. And that's actually Lala's team to authenticate it. So you're actually contributing back to the community, okay? So I'll wrap it up by saying stay safe, not just online, but offline. But hopefully the 3 E's is something we were able to accomplish: to educate you, to empower you with the tips, and help us pay it forward and evangelize. I'll send a copy of this link if you want to run this through your peers or to the other offices. You're more than welcome to do so. Thank you. Back to you, sir.
Yes, thank you very much. Ms. Mila and Ms. Ella for very detailed presentation. We will get our participants are very interested in this. We have a total of 5,689 successful participants. We extend our apologies for those who failed, who cannot enter the live event due to some technical concerns. Perhaps, Myla and Lala, you may find some questions that interesting you want to address before we.
Okay. Some of the questions. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so majority of the questions I have read are relating to the use of cookies. So cookies are not really a threat for malware because it doesn't spread viruses or malware, but it's a security threat in a way that you provide sensitive information when you accept cookies or use cookies. Because when you use cookies, you provide information like the sites you visit, and it collects important information like your activities online, like it can store your username or password. So although it cannot spread malware, if it's misused, the websites are not secure, the sites that you're accessing are not secure, it can allow hackers uh, may be allowed to access the cookies and use them for their malicious intent. And well, a lot of questions are also relating to what antivirus or what free tools they can use. Miss Myla, I think, have mentioned House Call and the mobile app
Yeah.
from Trend Micro, so you can use that one. Also, there are some questions I see relating to the use of HTTPS, especially for the Cisco example I've shown them. So, some may think that using HTTPS is a safe because it's a secure site, but actually it's one technique that phishers are abusing. So they would register their sites to HTTPS, making it appear like legitimate, but actually it's not. So this is to say that not all HTTPS are safe and are legitimate. So be careful as well. And what else? I'm just reading through the questions. There's one question about Zoom.
Yep.
What they can do since they're I think they'll be using it for their exam or I think. So what you can do is to make sure that your Zoom software is updated and use passwords when doing meetings.
Mhm.
I think they have updated or they have updated their tool.
So some of
And
the, if I can chime in, Lala, for some of a lot of us are using Zoom. So I think just not by default, just disable the functions that either you have, like number one is you have to assign a passcode or a PIN so that only legitimate people that you invite to the meeting are there. And then second is that please note in some Zoom accounts, there is a file storage capability, either to transfer, to share, make sure you disable that. And then some of the features, the good thing would happen with Zoom is I think it's overhyped. We are using Zoom actually in the company. As a security company, we're using Zoom. But the challenge that a lot of the consumers face is they were using the free one, okay? But Zoom has incorporated a lot of security features to safeguard us. So as Lala mentioned, ensure that you're using the most updated one. And then second is that please assign a lot of security parameters so that people don't just chime in unnecessarily. And then don't publish the Zoom link on a public platform like social media.
I have one interesting question here because we're in the pilot stage of using the Judiciary 365.
Yep.
Does Microsoft Teams scan files uploaded to SharePoint? So could it be used to ensure that all files are virus and malware free?
Okay, Microsoft is a platform. So you're using what we call, there's two things that you're using. One is, let's say Microsoft Team is just one function of it, like Zoom, right? But in my understanding is that you will be using Office 365. So Office 365 has improved security parameters, okay, that are features that are set into your account, right? The things that we have to do is really the challenge here would be with your MIS, how do you call that, your MIS or IT team, right? So some of the administrative, they have to really segment what functions are necessary as an admin user, what functions are necessary for users, right? So they have to be able to do that. But I guess let me give you the peace of mind that number one, they have security built in there, but it doesn't stop you from, again, investing on some. However, there is no single platform in the world that is risk-free. As what we said, the criminals are so advanced that they can manipulate it if they want to. Okay, so it's not 100% free, but the features are already embedded there. Like the two-tier authentication and the single sign-on, those are very important ones.
I think there are a lot of questions. It went to 239, but we cannot accommodate everything up to 430 only. So thank you very much to our resource persons, Ms. Myla Pilao and Ms. Lala Mali, and sharing your practical insights and suggestions in order to protect everyone in our digital life, which is indeed the new normal, no? The new normal in this very extraordinary time. Allow me to read our electronic certificates of appreciation
Oh.
for our resource persons. So if you can show them the screen, our respective certificates for Ms. Myla Pilao and Ms. Lala Manley. Allow me to read the text. Supreme Court of the Philippines, the Office of the Chief Justice in coordination with the Philippine Judicial Academy and the Office of the Court Administrator. Certificate of appreciation is given to Ms. Myla Pilao and Ms. Lala Manley for sharing their knowledge and expertise in cybersecurity strategies in dealing with digital threats and exhibiting their commitment to judicial reform during the webinar entitled The New Normal, Cybersecurity in a COVID-free, Malware-free Judiciary, held on May 12, 2020, 3 p.m. via Judiciary 365, given this 12th day of May 2020, Philippines. Signed, Diosdado M. Peralta, Chief Justice, Supreme Court of the Philippines, Adolfo S. Ascuna, Chancellor, Philippine Judicial Academy, and Jose Maidas P. Marquez, Court Administrator, Office of the Court Administrator. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
So this is a digital copy, so well accepted.
Thank
So
you,
once
sir.
again, Ms. Myla and Ms. Lala, maraming salamat po.
Thank you.
Thank
And thanks for
you.
everyone who've listened in.
As we are about to end, in behalf of the various offices that led to this first of a kind webinar in the judiciary, the Office of the Chief Justice, the Office of the Court Administrator, my office, PhilJac, the Public Information Office or the PIO, and the Management Information Systems Office or the MISO, our big thanks to all our participants. It is but timely to quote a world leader who once said, "These are extraordinary times that require extraordinary measures, extraordinary sacrifices, and extraordinary solidarity." Stay safe and God bless everyone. We shall end with the Philippine Judiciary Hymn.